Hi there. Today I want to talk to you a little bit about beguines, bulldozers, and warriors. Three things that seemingly have very little or no connection, but as we get into our talk today, there'll be some very clear parallels between the three. If you're someone who is really passionate about change in the world, improvements for humanity, and systems improvement, then all three of those things might already begin to connect within you subconsciously or a little bit more explicitly if you've ever been involved in the challenges of change. So we're going to start out with a little reflection on the beguines, of course, as we have to here. And what's really been striking me this week as I've been doing some more research and inquiry about the legacy of the beguines is their impact in developing sustainability for change. The way that they did their work was never as if they were out on a physical battlefield fighting for blood to the death. Their means of battle was always about compassion, understanding, empathy, and changing what they could in the systems around them that served people so that more people could have better access and better impact from whatever it was that they were trying to receive and grow with. So a lot of these women had to step out of what they were told was their future. Some women stepped out of rural and moved into urban. Some women stepped out of aristocratic and high class and chose to take on a life of simple means, not of poverty or impoverishment or deprivation by any means, but a life of simplicity and minimalism in whatever that meant to them. Others were able to step out of poverty and into a different world of empowerment, a different economic standing in the community. But what's so beautiful about these beguines is that even if they were independent and alone, all of them were independent, but some of these women did actually do some of their work alone. Usually women that were more in rural areas, because in urban areas they were able to actually create communities, whether it was just a handful of women in a home together, or it was actually a court beguinage where hundreds to thousands of the women shared a community and created space for them to do their work and to provide outreach to the community. But the beauty of how they did their work was so compassionate and always through the process of digging deeper within themselves. Never did they take an agenda from somebody else in the world around them and run with it as if that was their calling. They knew that there was a higher calling for their higher self, and they took that to heart by going inward to develop self first. And I love so much that these women were able to do systems change within themselves. They created a model for their own communities so that they could then take those learnings and apply it to the world at a broader angle and then create sustainable change. They created a legacy for themselves because of the way that they did this. And why do I bring this up? Because I've been in systems change and leadership for just long enough that I've been able to see leaders bringing the wrong skills, the wrong strategies, the wrong competence and knowledge even to a certain kind of change because they're looking at it exclusively as though the system was a machine rather than the system as a humanistic approach to work with people in the world. And that's what the beguines did so well. They knew that whatever humans needed, it had to be created and crafted tactically and strategically maneuvered so that it would eventually help people, not so that it would robotically produce something, but so that it would engage humans into a compassionate experience so that they too could heal and grow and become better. And of course, in that time, women didn't have freedoms, women didn't have many protections, and this threatened people. So it's very reminiscent of several years ago in my own leadership journey when I was complimented with the nickname bulldozer. And this is where the bulldozer comes into our story today, or into our conversation, in a way that when I first was told that, it wasn't meant as a compliment. Just like when the beguines initially were called beguines from other people, it wasn't always a compliment, but they took the word and learned how to make it, or learned how to use that to their advantage. And they said, that's what we are, yes, but it doesn't mean what you're assuming it to mean about us. So when I was called a bulldozer at first, because I made too much disruption, I made too much of an impact too fast, and people didn't like it, or people felt left behind who usually were out in the front leading. And it hurt for a while. I had to stop and think, yeah, I guess, because the only thing bulldozers can do is destroy things and drive over things and ruin them. And growing up on a farm, growing up around heavy machinery, even today, one of my favorite shows to watch is Gold Rush. So I'm thinking of bulldozer archetype and bulldozer consciousness today in the way that the guys and the women on Gold Rush use their huge bulldozers. And I'm thinking in my head really specifically, when these people go out into the forest, what is it that they need their D10 bulldozer for? And what kind of an impact does it help them make? How do they use the machinery creatively? Because when they're doing this work, they're not doing it to go out and tear down buildings and destroy things. So we can think about a bulldozer as a means to move something that's very big and heavy and seemingly immovable. The D10s are used to rip up permafrost so that the ground can thaw and we can get down to a layer of the soil that we can dig into, that we can cultivate differently and use differently. The D10s are used to transport other machinery. They're used as support utility vehicles. They're used to build roads and pathways and get a team from one place to another. So in the sense of the bulldozer, I have started, I guess just today, looking at how can a bulldozer be used and seen as something that's not just destructive and awful. So again, the lessons from the beguines are coming back to me as an opportunity to look at anything that people have called me in the past as a way to break me down or stop me from what I was doing. Taking it like they did creatively as a compliment to look at really how I can make this more of a movement, how I can own that and make it even more beautiful and wonderful. So I love thinking about the beguines and the bulldozers, and then bringing warrior into this. Right now, there are so many women talking about reviving the warrior within themselves, being empowered as a warrior woman or the warrior spirit. And doing that stuff without just making it feel good takes it to a different level within you and the impact that you want to do in the world. And what I mean by this is that oftentimes I find groups getting together and using the space that they create as a place to vent, as a place to share stories, but I find that there is a missing link to action. So we can join a group and we can vent together. We can share stories of pain and joy and the roller coaster of life. But to take what surfaces as insights from those stories and emotions and use it for directionality and action, right? We can be intuitive, we can be intelligent, we can develop skills and knowledge, but until it's applied to real life and put into action, until that competence is operationalized, it stays just as that. It's a static, kind of stagnant thing until it's applied and becomes wisdom. And once we've achieved or reached this space of wisdom, then there's this catalyst for a whole different kind of growth. The intellect, the skills and strategy we need to develop within us, when it's finally applied as wisdom, then all of a sudden it explodes into the world around us. We're doing so much more than focusing on just a little singular space in the world. And that's the starting point, right? We all have to do that individual growth and learning first. But to think about the warrior has to train, the warrior has to learn moves, the warrior has to learn strategy, the warrior has to figure out what it is inside of herself that she can pull out of the reservoirs of strength in order to face challenges. Once she knows those things, she can go do it and practice it and make it experiential. And that is where the warrior learns to become wise. And connecting it back to the bulldozer and the beguines, once we have this wisdom, this ancestral wisdom that we can tap into inside of ourselves, this is when we can really get down to the nitty-gritty business of changing the world. Rather than driving over and destroying things as the bulldozer, we can learn how to use this tool differently. Rather than going out as the warrior to sacrifice and kill and slay, we can learn how to be crafty and strategic and inclusive as a means to lead a movement. Just like the beguines gathered people into their communities, they collaborated with one another, but they still had their privacy, their own individuality. This is what warriorhood, womanhood, and this bulldozer consciousness are all about. So as we wrap up today, my question for you is, thinking back in your life, what is a story of you leading change in your own life or in a system, in an organization, in a movement, where people mistook your actions and your intentions as something bad? How has your truth been misinterpreted by other people as an act of malicious misunderstanding? And from that, what can you do to recontextualize? What were you really doing in that moment? And how do you bring the essence of that experience into the present so that in the future you can apply it with wisdom and use it in a very different way for a much more meaningful outcome and a much more sustainable outcome? So, as you ponder and reflect on some of your own experiences as a beguine, as a warrior, and as a bulldozer, I would love for you to drop comments here and share your story with me. Also invite other people to this channel. I want to keep growing it. I want to keep having conversations. And at the end of the day, build relationships that can help us make the world a better place. So until next time, enjoy your thoughtful experiences. Enjoy the life that you're living right now. Even if it's painful, know that you're on the right path, and what's going to come out on the other side is bigger and better than anything you've ever imagined before. Shine on, my beautiful beguine warriors, and I'll see you next time.